you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. So there are 34 million families in the U.S. that are unbanked or underbanked, meaning they rely on check cashing, on payday lending, or other financial services outside the traditional banking system. The cost for these families is huge. The average underbanked family makes about $25,000 a year, and it spends about $2,400 a year just on interest and fees for basic financial services. In other words, that's nearly 10% of their annual income, about the same amount that they spend on food. Now, a primary reason that they spend so much is they can't get to bank branches. It's a lot harder to open a savings account or checking account if there's no branch in your area, and banks are rapidly abandoning low-income and rural neighborhoods. According to SNL Financial, a research firm, banks are systematically closing their branches in areas where the median income is under $50,000 at the same moment that they are opening more branches in areas where the median income is over $100,000. And that trend is expected to continue in coming years. So a couple of months ago, a report from the Inspector General of the U.S. Postal Service recommended that the Post Office partner with banks and credit unions to provide basic financial services, check cashing, small dollar savings accounts. With post offices in every zip code, that would solve the access problem. In fact, 58% of post office locations are in zip codes with 0 or 1 bank branches. The post office could leverage its infrastructure to ensure that low-income families have both access to banking services, that rural families have access to banking services, and that those services are offered at a lower price. So what I want to ask is, Professor Martin, do you think that partnering between the Postal Service and banks and credit unions could be a better way to serve low-income and rural communities and do it at a lower cost than the current alternatives?
Sorry. I do actually think that this is a viable alternative. I think there are just a couple of things to keep in mind. One, in the report, the Inspector General indicates that, a couple of sample studies are small, start in a couple places first, see how it goes, see how the profitability goes. It's very important that those be started in areas without storefront payday loans, so that there is no issue about the hours and those kinds of things. And the other thing, of course, is who will be the partners and what will be the rates. But assuming that the rates will be cheaper, as indicated in the report, I think this is a very viable alternative that should definitely be pursued.
Mr. Rothstein, would you like to comment on it?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. So I think Professor Martin's right. I think the implementation phase would be the challenge. I think theoretically it makes sense, and it's actually done in Japan and Germany and other countries, which the biggest hurdle, I think, besides implementation would also be just sort of the and we've heard some of those opinions just even recently, yesterday in Nashville and then here today, about the hostility toward the idea of the government sector being involved in providing loans. And so I think that's the biggest hurdle.
Okay. Mr. Bourke, do you wish to comment on this?
We're interested in the issue. We haven't conducted research on it, but it is an issue we're interested in researching more. I'd like to say a more general comment about why millions of people today are opting or looking outside of the banking system for something that the banking system is not giving them. So I'll focus specifically on some research we recently published about prepaid debit card usage. We found that the people who use general purpose reloadable prepaid cards, these are essentially checking accounts without checks. People can buy them on J-hooks in drugstores and use them as bank accounts. The driving factor of why people are using prepaid cards is to gain more control over their finances and to gain shelter from overdraft fees and the temptations of credit. People are seeking commitment devices to help them only spend the amount of money that they have and not get into trouble with credit and overdraft fees. Prepaid cards are giving that to them right now because by and large prepaid cards don't allow overdraft or spending more than people have. And what we found interestingly is that 7 out of 8 prepaid card users either currently have or used to have a bank account. So people are actually experienced in the banking system, and they're starting to go outside of it. So whether it's the Postal Service or anything else, I would say this is a very important finding because we're seeing people looking for something that they're not getting from the banks. And I think we should keep this in mind when we're thinking about what the services are going forward.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I see that my time's expired, and I just want to say, I think this gives us an opportunity to expand access, an opportunity to create some real competition here, and an opportunity to think more creatively about how it is that people of moderate income, how it is that people who live in rural areas get access to the banking services that they most need. And so I appreciate the comments on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Looks like to me we have a win-win here. I'd like to take advantage of it.